This is Things Police See, First-Hand Accounts, with your host, Steve Gold.
Welcome to the podcast that interviews active and retired police officers about their most intense, bizarre, and sometimes humorous moments on the job. I'm Steve Gould. I'm old ginger face coming back at you, everybody. I'm getting pinker and pinker as the seasons change. I'll have you know if you're not watching the YouTube. I'll let the podcast listeners know. And thank you guys for the support. If you're new, thank you for finding the show. I encourage you to rip through the back catalog. It's all free. It's all there for you to get a better appreciation for the men and women of law enforcement, what they actually see and do and have to deal with. Thank you for the Apple Podcast reviews. I encourage you, if you love the show, one thing you can do to really help out is the 5-star Apple rating. I'd like to get to 1,000. I'm at like 900 and something. So 1,000's where I should be at. I really deserve that. I really want that. So please, that's the end of the pathetic begging, but I would appreciate it if you did. And if you really, really, really love the show, there is a Patreon. The link is in the show notes. You can choose a couple different levels. I will mail you a vinyl sticker for Things Police See. You'll have direct access to me, and you'll get the Patreon feed. I typically release the video episodes early on there, so a couple little perks, and you get to show me some love, which I like. So, guys, today we have a special guest here. He's had one hell of a law enforcement career, and then also transitioned into the big screen, which is interesting. The guy's story all the way around is fascinating, and his police career ended in a really kind of insane and bad way. He's gonna talk about that. He is a Mexican immigrant, former U.S. soldier, combat medic, and retired undercover law enforcement officer, having served as a member of the Arizona State Gang Task Force and the HIDTA Counter Narcotics Unit. Now turned actor and entrepreneur, Lou retired medically after sustaining career-ending injuries during an undercover assignment. He's been featured in films. He was on Breaking Bad, which I recognize him from right away. He's done numerous local and national commercials. He also is a keynote speaker. He speaks nationally that way. So without further ado, let me bring on your friend, my friend, the great Lou Pimber. Sir, thank you for coming on the show, man.
Thank you. I've never heard of that, the great Lou Pimber. You know what? It has a ring to it, man.
I think it does, man. I think it fits perfectly, actually.
Thanks.
Dude, Breaking Bad. That show, talk about the show to hop on as an actor.
Yeah, I felt pretty lucky, man. I feel lucky to this day. You know how lucky I feel? At home, I have a stack about, 6 inches of a bunch of renewal checks, or they call what do they call it? Residual checks from TV. And they're sitting there. My wife's like, when are we going to cash these things? I was like, I'll get to them. But to me, it's a reminder of work that I did years back that's still paying me today. But I was very fortunate to be on there. I almost didn't show up for the audition because I heard other people had been turned away already, like real actors, like real named actors, like really successful actors. Really? Yeah. That season in particular they wanted to make a real impression. So anyway, so a lot of people I heard got turned away, and I got the call, and I said, sure, I'll go. And then went through the whole auditioning process and prepared for it and everything. And I got the call back. I was out jogging one day, and my phone rang, and it's my agent. So when your phone rings and it's your actual agent, then you got a job, right?
So you were pumped.
Yeah, I was like, this is awesome. She says, hey, so they want you for that part. I'm like, oh, cool.
No big deal.
Of course, I was like a duck. I was cool on top, and my feet were going like this.
Right.
It's awesome. So, yeah, I was very fortunate. I just feel lucky because it's a great show, great people. I got to know some of those folks on there, just hardworking people. And it's not often you get to work on a project that I think there's going to be a whole new generation of fans for that show.
Yeah.
I mean, more residual checks.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Why wouldn't there be, man? It's like it's like an instant classic. It's so good. Actors don't get enough credit. And I used to be one of those people that would just like, it's just pretend. How easy is that? You just need the right people to see. So untrue, brother. I auditioned twice in my life.
Okay.
I used to dabble in stand-up comedy in Boston, and I did it for 6 years about. And towards the end, in stand-up comedy, and I was a full-time cop, so it was like, it took me 5 years to get 15 or 20 minutes that were okay, that made people laugh.
Yeah.
It was terrible. Yeah. So anyways, here and there you hear about casting, and Boston's a big place to shoot.
Yeah.
So I auditioned in Boston for Boston casting. Dude, it is hard. It is so hard to say the lines convincingly when everything in front of you is not that. You're not submerged at all in the feeling of what's going on. It's like just like especially this audition was like a soundstage, and the producer or whoever is here with her TA, and they're like, okay, do it again. I felt like embarrassed. At one point I was like, my mouth was tight because I was so nervous. I'm like, this is not for me. This is not easy. It's brutal, man. I thought.
Acting they shouldn't call it acting. They should call it being, right? I had a acting coach say to me one time, quit acting, just do it. Just be the part. I'm like, I said to myself, why do they call it acting? But it's for law enforcement, at least in my case, it was cathartic. It was like, it gave me a shot to relive that life again, but in an environment where no one really wants to kill me and shoot me.
Yeah, because you were already playing roles.
Yeah. And so, but I learned a lot. Acting also forced me to have to make new friends with different ideas, different lifestyles.
Sure.
And it also, believe it or not, acting. That's why you see so many actors who just kind of come apart at the wheels, because if you're very frail, if you have very thin skin, acting is very unforgiving. I mean, you're exposed. And if you're not good, they'll tell you you're not good. Yeah. I've seen actors on set. I was on Fox Studios, and I saw a director tell a guy, says, can you do it again? I said, don't suck so much this time, will you?
Oh.
Take 14. That's exactly what he did. And I was like, ouch. But, it's next. They'll find someone else. But, I don't think it's for everyone. I think if you come into the industry with somewhat of a solid background, with some life experience, you can apply those things we talked about, where you can actually come across as believable with things,
Yeah, in your case, yeah, right. In your case, you are, your life is dependent on being the bad guy, being the drug dealer. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like you almost innately are like, forced into it. So it's like a fight or flight survival thing. Was that easy to take that, what you did undercover, and apply it immediately to acting? Did it just click right away?
I almost wish I would have done it the other way around. Been an actor first and then worked undercover. But it was because, one, it gave me something to reference it, right? Because I normally play bad guys on movies, right? On TV or whatever I'm doing. And so it allowed me it gave me something to tap into. When I'm out doing a reverse, marijuana operation, where I'm passing myself off as the guy who is, smuggling, 500 pounds of weed, and I got to sell it to some bad guy. Well, I can relate to that in acting because I've kind of been in that role already. And so in law enforcement, there's some posturing involved. There's some acting involved in the undercover work,
Sure.
Because the difference is this. In acting, you get multiple takes.
Right.
In law enforcement, you get one shot,
Yeah.
But I always remember, before I got into film, I always remember the scene from Scarface where Tony walks in the hotel room in Miami, and he sees that the situation doesn't look right. And he says, what's going on? He goes, should we start over? And he comes out and he comes back in, like take two, because he knew something didn't feel right. But in the world of drug dealing and moving drugs, guns, dopes, and all that stuff, there's no retakes.
Yeah, we've had a bunch of undercovers on here, and one of them, Lorenzo Toledo, a real popular episode. He was an ATF guy, and he ran a whole, warehouse in New York that was fake, and his persona was fake, and all that stuff. And it's just crazy to have so much on the line and just kind of live this other. You're being this other person. You know what I mean? He actually ended up consulting on the Jamie Foxx and Colin Farrell movie, what was the movie they redid? Was it Miami Vice? I think it was Miami Vice.
Yeah.
He consulted with another ATF guy, and you should, you guys, if you haven't heard, you should go back and listen to that episode because it's really funny. The director said that Colin Farrell got too cocky. He said, "Can you call in some of your buddies and set up a fake buy?" You know.
I'm aware of that.
Yeah. So he tells the story of him and his buddy kind of punking Colin Farrell. He said Colin Farrell was like, whiter than white, and he's like, it was too funny to have an actor be put all of a sudden with all those acting skills. They all just melted away, and he's like, "Save me!"
Yeah, man, that's the way it is. Look, my first undercover drug deal, it was something very basic, but you're so afraid you're going to be discovered, at least that was my concern. You're so afraid you're going to be discovered, but you just got to go with it. Look, it takes a special person to want to work in the undercover world of police work.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a special person to be a cop to begin with, right? I love my men in blue, right, and my women in blue, and but it takes a special kind of breed to go and say, okay, I'm going to take off the badge, I'm going to take off the body armor, I'm going to take off the uniform, I'm going to take off the command presence, and I'm going to just go be me.
All your tools
right?
gone.
It's it, man. It's just you. I wrote in my book, it's just you, your brains, and a big pair. That's it.
Say that again, man.
All you got.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Lou, can you take us back to a young patrolman, young officer pimper on the job? Can you think of one of the first early calls you went to where you really got like an adrenaline dump or you got excited?
Man, there were so many. It's just, I remember the first time I stopped somebody. The poor guy was so afraid, and I'm trying to figure out why is he so afraid. And my trainer was like, "Dude, you just scared the shit out of this guy." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You gotta like tone it down a little bit. He doesn't want to hurt you." I'm like, "Oh, that's right. I'm sorry." But my first time, I think it was a suicide. It was a suicide. There's so many, but I can think of this one. It was a suicide situation where the guy, as we come up on him, he shoots himself. Right. And I'm watching the girlfriend from the window as she's calling in. He's in the car and the round came through, and it was as we're coming up on the car, the round comes through. And, as a cop, you're trained to respond to fire, right, to rounds. And I was thinking in my mind, was it him? Was it her? Where did it come from? Turned out it was him. So now it goes from a hot situation like that to now we have to attempt to rescue this guy, So you go from being you're there to become the protector, right? You're there to protect. You're there to do something, to take action, to becoming a helper to save this person's life, which we did not. But giving someone CPR with a hole in the back of their head is just not the most ideal situation. It was me and another guy. I said, "Dude, I'm taking compression. I will take compressions. You can do the other part if you want."
Yeah. Usually nobody wants compressions because it's tiring, but we'll swap it up. That is great. With CPR too, it's like you don't want to be the one that said that you didn't try. Even though unless his head's off or something. But if it's like even remotely, you're like, all right, we're gonna make it look good. We're gonna try.
Well, the guy was asking for help. Like he was still somewhat intelligent, And then a few years later, I'm in the gang unit, and a partner says, "Hey, I need to do some backup over here at a location." I show up, and we were a gang unit, and he's there to serve papers, seizure paperwork on some gangster's property, right? There's another gangster in the car parked next to him, so I go talk to him. This guy downs a whole tall boy of beer, just guzzles it. I'm like, "Hey, bro, why are you doing that, dude? Like, you're asking for my attention at this point."
Right.
"No, it's good. I'm 21. I said, "I know you're 21, brother, but there's a thing called drinking in public. You can't do that." He goes, No, I'm good. I said, "Come out of the car real quick." So I check his ID. He's got warrants. So I take him into custody. He's in custody now. And all of a sudden, the guy starts to seize on me, foaming at the mouth, eyes going back.
Ooh.
It becomes worst case scenario because as I'm walking up to this guy and getting him out of the car, his homie brother walks by and just like, F the police type of things, right? And they're just walking by. I'm just going to watch him leave. Now when brother comes back, what does he see is his brother flopping like a fish on the sidewalk, handcuffed, foaming and bleeding from the mouth. Of course, he thinks I did it. So he summons the whole posse, right? So now it goes from being this cop to like, oh, how do I help this guy?
Yeah.
Ugly situation. He got transported. I went to the hospital. Hospital gets full of homies coming after me. But, he passed away. But just life is just, here they gone tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were able to communicate to them like, this is not something I did. He must have had a condition maybe they knew about. He
OD'd on cocaine.
Oh.
What he was chugging down was he had chugged down, I think it was a teener. Yeah, it was a teener, which is 1/16 of an ounce of cocaine.
Okay.
Just, he thought he'd pass it in a plastic bag, but he didn't.
Man, that's insane.
I get my rights read to me because he's dead in my custody. You know what I mean? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You're reading me my rights. All right. You're reading me my rights.
That's nuts. Yeah. That always surprised me about how willing some people are to be drug mules or just do it in that situation, do that. I'd rather take the ride. I'd be like, hey, you got me. I'm not eating this cocaine.
And to be honest with you, man, I wasn't even going to mess with him. I was just going to keep an eye on him to make sure my buddy does his paperwork, and we were going to leave. Seize the car and just leave. But, people make choices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Lou, can you tell us about a strange or bizarre thing you dealt with? I'm sure there's tons to pick from on that one.
I worked undercover in the HIDA unit for a number of years as well, right? So I was undercover in the gang unit, and then I got transferred to HIDA to work bigger cases, right?
What's HIDA mean?
HIDA is high intensity drug trafficking area. So they have them in certain areas. It's a federally funded organization that supports law enforcement groups, and it's made up of all sorts of agencies.
Okay.
And so I'm in there, and man, we did some. I was doing some buys with some dudes making meth and stuff like that. Well, we found out where the lab was at, and of course, I wasn't trained to go into labs, right? So I'm watching. So the guys go in with their Scott Air packs and everything to go do the lab. As they're bringing people out, these people are coming out, and they're in handcuffs, but they're some of them were naked, some of them were in their underwear. But the thing is this, they hadn't showered probably in 2-3 months probably. They were cooking. They were cooks.
Oh.
And their toenails were just like, you ever watch Land of the Lost? I don't know how old you are, but Land of the Lost, there was a thing called slee stacks. They were real live slee stacks. They were they hadn't seen sunlight, daylight in who knows how long.
Were they slaves?
They were voluntarily cooking meth.
Wow.
When we looked up who these people were, they were one of them had been a professor at a university, chemistry professor. Okay. Others were just everyday Joes. One of them had been just like a career person. They get hooked up on meth and decide they want to cook this stuff up. The professor was leading the pack, and they became cooks for outlaw bucket gang.
Wow. So you have some real parallels to Breaking Bad.
Yeah, it was so weird for me. Being there and watching them. And then I was like, I've seen this stuff. This is crazy.
That's crazy, man. So are they living in is it like a remote house, or is it like a warehouse, or?
It was somewhere remote. A big house. It was one of those houses that you could tell it was a nice house back in the day, but they just trashed it, Bikes out front, trailer in front, dogs running amok. But eventually we figured out this is the lab where these people were doing their thing. I was my job as the undercover on that was I was passing myself off as a Mexican national, and I was hooking them up with barrels of Red Devil Lye to make some of this meth. And so the crazy part about it is this whole group was run by a girl. When I met her, I thought the leader of the pack was these two big, scary-looking biker dudes, long-haired. And it was her and her baby in tow. She's barefooted, pair of jeans, expensive jewelry, barefooted, and her baby and a couple dudes, and we're there to talk dirt together.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's weird. Say the cook there, like the high school teacher, whatever, which is like so much like Breaking Bad, or the college professor. What would a guy like that be, besides getting his own fix? What would they be paying him? Like, do you have any idea what they were paying these people?
You know, I didn't get to that because the other people who were dealing with him dealt with him primarily. But what happens is they reach a point in their life where they don't care about that anymore.
They just want the product.
Yeah, because methamphetamine keeps you high for 12 to 24 hours. Just depends, and I'm sure there was some kind of payment arrangement going on, but I didn't get to that.
Wow. So you get, once you get somebody hooked, you have the opportunity to just run a human being on like nitro for however long they last, and then just find another one.
Yeah.
Damn, man, that's crazy. And is it were they making it blue?
No, they were making this stuff. They called it peanut butter. They call it peanut butter. Yeah. It was it's so disgusting, man. I didn't dare go into the lab. I'm like, no, I'm not going in that lab, man. The air had to be tested. OSHA, it was just a mess. We had to have OSHA standards met. We had to have SWAT cops that were trained to go into meth labs. It's very explosive. It's very, very volatile.
Yeah, I had a year and a half ago. I had a clandestine lab training, and we have in the state. We have a state police team that responds to that. So, like, if you stumble across one, which not that long after I did, backing up another agency, so dumb, the guy just ran from a traffic stop into where he was going, into a barn, and the other cop's up there, and I follow him up there, and he'd already found the guy who's in the back of the car, and I'm like, what's going on, man? This seems like this call seems weird. And it had already been broken down, but there were little jars everywhere, and so he was making meth, but also GHB. Yeah, he was making all these little jars, and there was like little tinfoil packets everywhere, and powder, and all. It was like, and the first thing they told me in the class was like, back out and just call somebody who knows what the hell they're looking at.
Yeah,
don't start moving stuff around or smelling things, because you have no idea what's in this stuff.
Right. Yeah, it's bad. It's bad, and I got involved with a certain outlaw biker gang, mainly because they were looking for a Mexican hookup who can hook them up with the precursor materials. I worked law enforcement and out in the Southwest, and there's just a lot of that. Most of my undercover jobs or assignments were either cases that I self-generated or that I was I volunteered as a UC for other agencies and stuff like that. And a lot of reverse ops. I don't know if they do those out where you're from, but imagine Fast and Furious, but with drugs.
Crazy, man. I mean, I think you guys just have a lot of it going on just because of the geographical, and plus there's tons of land out there. Affordable land you can buy. Northeast is very crowded. It happens here, but I'm not a drug guy. I'm just a patrol guy. But they in the class they taught us about how they make one pots, and like it's so friggin' dangerous. But they'll make a campsite out in like in the woods, and they'll just make one pots out there and take hits of meth. And one guy was there telling the story, and he had the guy in his front seat of his car, and he had just made one, and there's a point where like it has to be bled off or it will explode. Yeah. It's like a 2-liter bottle. And I'm like, I don't understand how they must have some brains, because they're doing this a lot, and I'm not going to a lot of calls of people blowing their hands off. You know what I mean?
It's like this, man. I used to watch these guys, and I used to think, wait a minute, when I was a kid, my dad and my uncle would work on the car, smoking a cigarette, bleeding the fuel out of a tank, and there's fuel over there. I'm playing in it because they have me washing they're having me wash the tool barehanded. And when I think about it later on, I'm like, this was just as bad. It's just as bad. So but at the whole level, man, when you're dealing with methamphetamine, so many things that happen, so many things that when you mix these chemicals or you shake them or you sniff them, a lot of bad things can happen. And most of those people, their motivation is different, Motivation is different.
Yeah, and that was kind of the neat thing about Breaking Bad was it was like the idea was here's a guy with like he's focused, he's highly intelligent, and he's going to put that mind to making meth rather than some junkie. Like he started out, cracking the chemistry book and like doing it the absolute perfect way, and he made all that great meth. Great meth quote. Quote.
Yes. Yeah, he's an interesting guy too. I met him a couple times. I chatted with him. I got to chat a lot. Who I talked to a lot was Detective Mike.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his name's Jonathan Banks. When I'm in a van with him, the guy who plays Gus, Giancarlo Esposito, Detective Mike, and Aaron Paul sitting behind me, Pinkman, and we're driving to a location, and I go, Jonathan, he goes, yeah, I got to tell you a story, man. He goes, what is it? He goes, when I was a kid, I used to watch a show called Wise Guy with Ken Wall. It's because of that I wanted to be an undercover cop, undercover drug agent. He goes, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, hang on a second. He goes in his pocket, pulls out a little flip phone, he still had a little flip phone, right? And he calls Ken Wall.
Wow. And
I was like, oh, shit, dude, this is awesome. I'm talking to Ken Wall, talk to Ken Wall right now. But I've been fortunate, man, that I don't come from success or money or anything like that. I probably shouldn't have even been a cop the way I was growing up. But, after I had to retire from law enforcement, I was able to put myself in positions to, fulfill a lot of my life goals, just different things. Meet people that were once influential in my life on paper that I got to meet them in person. They were once influential to me in music. I work with them in person. I write in my book, I talk about how RZA and Too Short and Tupac and all those guys were the soundtrack to my life as an undercover narc. Fast forward a few years later, I'm on the set of Gang Related, and I see RZA, and I'm like, bro, hang on, let me show you how to work this MP5, bro. Let me show you so you look legit. He goes, okay. And I had to tell him, bro, let me tell you a story, bro. This is what I used to do. And your music was the soundtrack to my undercover life, bro. He goes, really? He goes, yeah. And so, I've been fortunate in that sense, so. Yeah.
That's cool. That's a really cool story. Too Short, baby. The bitch's pimp. Yeah. Excuse my language.
That's right.
Damn. Lou, can you tell us about the most intense thing that happened in your career?
It's so interesting, brother. I ended up writing a book, okay? And I know we'll talk about it in a minute, but in my book, I share a story. When I was a kid, living in a crap neighborhood, right? My father comes home one day. He'd been gone for a while. He's an alcoholic. Comes home on crutches. What happened? He goes, well, this cop arrested me. I was stupid. I shouldn't have done it. Should have got arrested. Don't get me wrong, he says. But the guy slammed the door on me like a dozen times and broke my ankle.
Oh.
Right? At that time in my life, I just adored police. I wanted to be the good guy. I wanted to be the guy who shows up and fixes stuff, right? Fast forward, man. Years later, I'm on a drug deal with a guy that I call him langosta or lobster, because he was missing middle fingers, so he just had these fingers right here. He looked like a claw. Mm-hmm. His fingers had been cut off years ago by some other drug dealers, right? He probably stole some money or something. But that ended up being my last drug deal. And I've been on several hundred drug deals. Worked undercover the majority of my career. The most intense thing that happened to me, man, was I ended up getting hurt on the job, not by bad guys, but by my own guys. And it was brutal. It was intentional. It was deliberate. And I ended up with a traumatic brain injury, a permanently dislocated jaw, a permanently damaged inner ear, a lot of issues that come from a brain injury.
You sound like they tried to kill you.
It was a bad deal. It was a bad deal. And I write about the details about it. And it took me years to write about it, man, because I love law enforcement. I love the guys that do it. There's just that one or two that just mess it up for all of us, And so it became a problem. It became the catalyst. It was what caused me to have to shift and change my life at that point. It forced me to have to reinvent. See, what happens with cops is sometimes they leave law enforcement and all they know is law enforcement.
Febreze is a proud partner of Can't Cancel Pride. However you choose to express yourself, Febreze has the perfect scent to make your home even more fabulous in your own unique way. Have an amazing Pride from Febreze.
Right? Which is not a bad thing, but law enforcement, because there's so much adrenaline dump that happens in it, so much negativity that happens in it, so many I almost died moments that happen in it, and that happened to me as well, that it changes you, right? And so you leave law enforcement and you just don't know who you are anymore. You don't know what to do anymore. You still think you're that guy.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, and so it was hard, man. And I had to reinvent. I had to read books. I had to change my associations. My physical therapist, they sent me to a neurologist, right, to work with, and he sent me to a speech therapist who said, I need you to read books, because I was having trouble tracking, but the nystagmus was just onset a lot. And so I picked up books on business. When I picked up books on business, it forced me to reinvent. It forced me to have to see things from a different point of view. I read Robert Kiyosaki books. Years later, I'm with Robert Kiyosaki at a house in Florida. I read Jordan Peterson. I read all sorts of stuff. I got to meet Jordan Peterson later on in life. And so it forced me to reinvent, man. It's what led me into the world of film and television. It wasn't like I sought out to be an actor. It was right place, right time, preparation and timing, right? Visiting some friends. She says, weren't you a cop or a soldier? I say, I was actually both. I was a soldier for a number of years, and I was a cop. She goes, well, there's a guy here from Cablevisión, which is a Mexican cable network, filming, and they need a guy who can show them what you do. I said, she was, do you speak Spanish? I said, claro que sí, I speak Spanish. So I was like, are you putting me on right now? Because I'm the guy for it, man, and that allowed me a chance to see something different in my life. It allowed me, and then the director was very sharp in that he goes, hey, look, this is you on camera. This is what you look like. You should come and read for me. And so I said, sure, man. And he ended up writing a little part for me in there. And that's how I got in film, man. I ended up finding acting to be very therapeutic for me. Wow. Because I was dealing with a lot of shit from law enforcement, man. Like, you live that high-speed life for so many years, and then when all of a sudden it comes to a sudden stop, everything, all that baggage, all those near misses, all those close calls, all those fights, all those oh shit moments, they all come to a head. And you're no longer suppressing them with activity. Yeah. And I was dealing with a bunch of crap, man, a lot of stuff. And so a book reading helped me. I got that. And then I ended up writing a movie called Duress, Duress. You can find it on my YouTube channel, which is under my name, YouTube, Lou Pember. It's a film called Duress. And I wrote it, and I put two undercover scenarios into one small film, and that film won at a bunch of film festivals.
Oh, that's awesome.
When I saw it, I realized through that beating I took a couple years back is what led me to this today. And that's how I ended up getting an agent and getting a shot to be on a show like Breaking Bad and other things. But the question was, what was the craziest situation I've been in? There was many, but that's the one that changed my life.
Yeah. The listeners will kill me if I don't ask. Can you give us like a little bit of the nexus of that, or a little more detail of what happened?
Yeah. I set up before that, I had set up a drug deal with an MS-13 guy to bring me a bunch of heroin. And he really squirrely, very dangerous guy. Like, I've done a lot of drug deals, but no one ever really intimidated me or scared me. This guy was, when you sit, physically he's not very imposing, but this aura, this evil about, he reminded me of the Night Stalker, Richard Ramirez, except with no hair. Okay. Scary dude. And I told the SWAT guy, I say, listen, this guy's pretty squarely. When you guys come out, when we eventually get this guy, come out in maybe a half moon shape. Don't come out in a single file, because this he's dangerous. this particular team wasn't very fond of being given advice or suggestion from guys like me, right? Although I had hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of SWAT training in school from the military,
Sure.
They weren't open to it. Sure enough, man, he ends up bringing me the heroin, and it was like a pound of it, right? And he had more with him, and they lose him. They lose him, and he ends up taking 3 different families kind of hostage for a few hours at a time, and they lost him. A lot of bad things happened after that. Debrief happened. I said, listen, guys, he got away. Maybe I should have done a better job of cornering him in the process, but got away. It became it was a bad mark on these guys, but not on all of them, but just people just messed up. Police work isn't an exact science, so
sure.
We practice. It's police. They should call it police practice. Like doctors practice medicine, we practice law enforcement, right? And so that turned into a grudge, right? And so fast forward a little bit later, I'm meeting with Langosta, and he brings me a bunch of cocaine. We had met earlier. We showed him some cash, surprised him with that. A couple hours later, we meet again. Arrest signals were given. Everything was good to go. Police come in, and as I'm laying down next to my undercover vehicle, SWAT comes around, and one guy in particular just went right for me. As I'm laying down, he just commences to beat the crap. Just kick, stomp, face, neck, face, head, arm,
Jeez.
Everything. And it's been so many years that it's still difficult to even talk about it, because part of me has to admit that this happened. I don't want to admit that these guys did that.
Yeah.
For their sake and for the men who work there, who are good men and women, right? But it happened. And so, long and short, I get a phone call from an old partner of mine, an old narc. He says, hey, man, he tells me in Spanish, supe que la traían contigo, bro. He goes, I heard they had it out for you, bro. And I said, but I can't talk to you where I'm at. He says, I have to go. 10 days later, he ends up dying. Okay. He's dead. And so I had just a lot of issues with it, man. And so I ended up having to medically retire after that.
Damn, man. That's nuts. Yeah. That is a crazy story. So this guy was willing to trade his career to do that, or trade whatever. I don't see what he could use for an excuse, but damn, man, I'm sorry that happened, though. That's horrible. But like you were just saying, it birthed a whole nother part of your life.
Brother, I had choices, bro. I can either become a victim, I can become a statistic. That broken down alcoholic, pain pill using, getting out of shape cop.
Sure.
Or I can say, that's enough of this, man. I gotta stop, and I gotta man up. I gotta reinvent, man. And I tell people, reinvention is ongoing. You can't stay the same old, because you have to evolve. You have to evolve.
And good for you, man. Like you were saying before, and I'm included in this bunch a lot of times where cops really think they don't have any, like, I hear cops say all the time, like, oh, I gotta hire somebody to come to my house and do something for me. I'm useless. I don't know. I don't have any skills. I don't know how to do anything. Like, thank goodness for this job, because what would I do? But really, cops have tons of skills. There's tons of skills that all kinds of corporate jobs and insurance companies would love to utilize that you can only get at the police. But so many cops really feel like, I got nothing. I'm not.
One of the biggest skills that cops have, man, especially for you listeners who are cops or want to be cops, is the skill you're going to develop is problem solving, right? We can problem solve. Entrepreneurs, we solve problems, right? That's what I am now. And so the thing is, though, you have to know how to transition that into the civilian world, because in law enforcement, we solve problems. We have that much time to do it.
Right.
In the normal world, you have a boardroom, you have sessions, you have a conference, you have a meeting, you have time. In police world, you have seconds to solve for that. And sometimes it involves force, sometimes it involves brute force, sometimes it involves deadly force, sometimes it just involves a very direct conversation. Right? And so, but that's a skill, man, that cops, we all develop.
Oh, heck
it's
yeah.
probably, yeah.
Yeah, when I worked, when I was in backgrounds, I've said this before in the show, but when I worked backgrounds at LAPD for a couple of years, every guy in the background unit, there was civilian, non-sworn, and then there was like sworn intermingled. But all the guys that were non-sworn were sworn before, and now they're either retired or they're doing a second career in backgrounds or whatever. And just working a job where the nothing stressed these guys out. Nothing could get these guys stressed out because, like you said, every problem was like in slow motion. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, oh my gosh, 40-hour work week. You know, I can take days off. I don't work at night. You know, no one got. Know who would get really freaked out was like the civilian managers of the unit that would be like all crazy about numbers and getting things done in time, and all the coppers were like, yeah, don't worry about it. We'll take care of it. Not a big deal. Yeah. No one broke a sweat down there.
Yep. It's like, how bad could it get? No one's gonna die. No one wants to shoot me. You know what I'm saying? We'll get it. We got you, man.
Yeah, hell yeah. Hey, I apologize for that noise. That's the water pump to my house. I do this lovely little show in my basement, so I tell the family don't use the water when I'm down here, but we have 3 kids and my wife, so it's kind of a ridiculous request.
The next thing you're gonna do is say you want more meatloaf in the basement, like the guy in the movie.
Right. Lou, can you tell us about a heartwarming encounter you had on the job?
Shit. It was kind of heartwarming when I found out there was a hit on me from some guy. It was in county. He was in the jail. He had written a letter he had gotten from somebody in prison to come after me. So it was pretty heartwarming to know.
Only a cop would think that's heartwarming.
I was like, these guys are writing letters about me, man. They're like, that's awesome. That's I got the letter. I was like, this guy's full of shit. I'm not, like, I'm better than what he wrote about me right here, right? But it was nice to know that cops immediately stepped up to fix that problem. Yeah. They addressed it right away. It's heartwarming when you see people that turn their life around, or that you leave a good impression on them. It's heartwarming for me to see people that I met, not in an undercover capacity, but that I met and that I was able to make a positive impact on them. I wish I had more heartwarming, touchy-feeling stories for you, bro, but I just don't, because
that's okay.
When you work undercover for so many years, there's a lot of bad stuff that happens.
Oh yeah. It's funny. Some people do have legitimate heartwarming stories, but most of that heartwarming stories cops have is like, there was one I always talk about when he was telling. I wish I could remember who it was, but it was a heartwarming story because he encountered a child whose parent had blown their own head off in front of the kid. But then later in life, the kid came back and said, "Oh, I wanted to meet the guy that found me." It was like the whole story was so horrible. Yeah. And at the end, he was but then he came back to thank me. So like we really struggled to really, unfortunately, pull anything good out because, like you said, we're bombarded with the ugly things in the world. So I totally get it, brother. So this last question, Lou, is real popular. A lot of coppers or would-be coppers listen to the show and are trying to decide if they'd want to do the job or not. Would you have any advice to new officers looking into it or getting on the job now?
I would advise people who get into law enforcement to read a lot of leadership books, right?
Yeah.
From people that are not in law enforcement. Leadership books, like I love John Maxwell. I got to know him as well. Great leadership writing, because policing is leadership. When you police a community, you're leading that community, whether you believe it or not, right? You're leading them. So you have to know how to get people to do stuff when they don't want to. Like, when you tell someone they're under arrest, there's a lot of things that's going through their mind.
Yeah.
So I recommend that. Number 2, I recommend that you appreciate the fact that you should only focus on the things that you can control. In other words, if you're gonna if you bear your flag on something, if you're going to like really take a stand on something, it's something that you can control. You can control your attitude. You can control your associations. You can control your actions, right? So focus on the things you can control. You can't control the outcome in court. You can't control whether this individual gets indicted or not. You can't control the actions of your command staff, but you can control the things you say, the things you write down.
Yeah.
You control those things, and man, maintain a level of fitness, because you're going to get into fights, you're going to get into physical altercations, and within 11 seconds, you're going to know whether what the outcome of that fight's going to be, because your heart rate will get up to 200 that quick, and if you're out of shape, you think your fine motor skills tend to diminish and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I recommend that reading some good leadership books, focus on the things you can control, and maintain a level of fitness.
Great advice, man. That was there's some real pearls in there I'd never heard before. So thank you for that, Lou. Let's talk a little bit about breaking badly.
Yeah. I just published it, man. So thank you so much for sharing it. It's on Amazon.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man. And I've got a copy right here as well. It's I was trying to figure out the name of the book, and I realized post law enforcement, I went through a lot of shit, man. Stuff that I'd rather you just read about than me talk about it right here, because
right.
I was broken for a while. I was in bad shape for a while. And I had to I had to take my own advice. I had to focus on the things that I could control. Right. And I wrote the book. It's a memoir of some of my a little bit on my youth, not very much, a little bit on my undercover work, some cases, some most notable cases. And then it's the process of reinventing how I took a post-traumatic stressful situation and made it into a post-traumatic success story for myself, and so it's doing very well. It's getting great reviews on Amazon, and I get people messaging me on Facebook who had a girl message me. She goes, "Oh my gosh," she goes, "Thank you so much for writing this book. I had a lot of good takeaways from it, And so I wrote it. It just came out. I wrote it thanks to my wife really getting on me to do it. I didn't know how to write it, man. How do I tell him that? How do I tell him this isn't a hero book? I don't look like a champion in this book. Just so you know, it isn't one of those books. So like, look at me, look how great I did. No, it's not like that. A lot of mistakes I made as well. A lot of things I did that were just I shouldn't have been doing after law enforcement. But it's also the truthful conversation I had to have with myself and my children to reinvent my life, man. And it's about how entrepreneurship helped save me. I became a businessman. I'm now in the business of insurance and financial services. I help a lot of cops with their retirement planning and stuff like that, post law enforcement.
That's awesome.
And so it's a book on reinvention, man. There's a letter there that I write to the cops. It's in that book, on what to do after law enforcement, just couple suggestions, but it's something that I just didn't know how to write it. Because I guess I didn't have an ending for it. And when I after years of being an entrepreneur, I realized I can use that as an ending, and so it's a good read, man. It took me a long time to write it. I thought about it for 7 years, Wow. I started it and then I stopped. And then my wife says, "Listen, we're going to take a cruise. And I'm going to get this private little hut on the beach. And I think it was Honduras, I think. And you're going to write." And that's why I started writing, man. I started writing and it was helpful, but it was also hard because I couldn't sleep because I had to relive those moments all over again. It was like these words that I was writing were on loop. They were on loop in my head at night, reliving these moments. And I was like, is this good for me to write this book? I said, no, it is. It's going to be good because it's going to help somebody, So there's a book trailer on my YouTube as well.
I was going to say, I don't think the interview was great, man. I'm honored to have you on, but I feel like I watched that book trailer. I don't think we really gave the right, how great this book is, how great your life has been, how like the perseverance is really, really boiled into the end of the victorious part when you came out and you changed your mindset and you were successful. We're not getting that picture. It's really cool. I'll put a link to that video in the show notes. So if you're listening, just go right on your app. You'll be able to click there and check it out, because Lou's life really is it's inspiring and it's crazy, to be honest.
Yeah. It's I feel lucky, but I can only attribute the success that I've had so far on three things. One is the books I read, the people who I associated with, and the places I found myself hanging out at, the people, the organizations. But yeah, I feel fortunate, man, even though my career didn't end the way I would have liked it, but it did. And I don't believe things happen for a reason. I think things happen. The reason is what you make of it after that,
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so and I tell people, look, I'm a comeback story in progress, man, and I still have a few more, I still got a few more acts to go, man.
Dude, absolutely. Dude, you're a great actor. I'll tell you right now. I'm not blowing smoke. You're very believable. You're a very spooky and scary gangster dude on Breaking Bad.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And look, anybody wants to get into law enforcement, man, we need good cops. It's never the right time to get into law enforcement. I became a cop when O.J. Simpson.
No one's ever going to like you.
And Rodney King situation happened. I was like, what? So there's never the right time. But we need good men. We're the protectors. We're the protectors. Our job is to serve. We do a lot of serving. And then when it comes down to protect, you have to do the protecting, because other people either don't want to or they can't.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, the great Lou Pimber. Lou, again, honor to have you on the show, brother. I'm going to transition to all Lou's stuff will be in the show notes and on the website and on the Facebook page. I'm going to transition to the outro here. Can you hang out just for like 3 minutes before we're good to go?
Of course. Yes, sir.
All right. Lou Pimber, man, great stories. What a crazy and triumphant life. Very, very cool. Pick up his book. The link is in the show notes. It will be on the website, like I said. Great to have him on. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for checking out all the shows. Thank you for the continued support from the Patreon group. I really, really, really appreciate that. I'm not joking. When I see that I got a new Patreon supporter, I'm so pumped because my phone makes a little sound and I can see you're there. And I write to you immediately thanking you, just so you know. And if you become a sergeant on the Patreon level, I will, in fact, shout you out on roll call, which I'm about to do right now. I'm talking about Sarah Pomeroy, Andy Biggs, great Gad Boy, the great Adam Mehall, Chris June, Gary Steiner, Jake Pinito, John Shoemaker, Lauren Stimpson, the handsome Lane Campbell, Seth Wright, William James Long, that's Deputy William James Long to you, sir, the great James Rose, Tony Fahey, Ben Peters, Braden Walker, Corey Payne, Jason Lau, the great Mike Wynn, everybody, Nathan Gowan, Sasha McNabb, Scott Minkler, the great Tammy Walsh, Sean Clifford, Dennis, because that's all he put, Iceman from Motocrop Chronicles, George Tessier, Nick News, Scott Young, the great Tom Connell, Wayne M. Miller, Burley Boards, that's Dan Carlson, everybody, Doug and Kelly Newman, love you guys, Joe DeVries, Dave Ellman, Elliot Sykes, Holly Vanover, Richard Tolles, Brittany Sims, Christian, because he just wants Christian, and, almost made it, guys, Jace Crow, I appreciate you, good sir. Thank you, guys, for the continued support. I love you, and I will see you next week.